Good evening. The polls in the Palmetto state have closed as the Democrats now choose their nominee or votes on who should be the Democratic nominee this year. Will President Joe Biden win by a large margin, or will it give momentum to Dean Phillips or Marianne Williamson? We're gonna find out. This is Capital Politics coverage of America Votes Campaign 24, the South Carolina primary.
Are you with me in this one?
We will lead America back to its rightful and righteous place.
I don't want just a little change. This country needs to turn around.
This is a Capital Politics special. America Votes, Campaign 24. The South Carolina Democratic primary.
Good evening and welcome once again to Capital Politics live coverage of the 2024 South Carolina Democratic primary. Polls have now closed in the state and the race is too early to call. President Joe Biden, uh, historically, Iowa and New Hampshire were first, but President Joe Biden uh, elected to have South Carolina move to the front of the pack. That I'm reading an NBC News article. The DNC actually changed the date of the election or the primary because usually the first in the nation was Iowa and New Hampshire. Well, New Hampshire, by the way, already cast their vote, but President Biden is not in the ballot because the DNC, I think, doesn't recognize New Hampshire being the first anymore. So that's why uh, still President Biden won the New Hampshire uh, primary race by a write-in vote. And now they are now considering South Carolina first in the nation for the Democrats. Well, as again, the race is too early to call, and delegates at stake is 55 delegates at stake. Well, President Biden is actually expected excuse me expected to win this primary race because he is leading or having a big lead in the polls. Actually, in the Democratic nomination polls, he has a big lead. So that's why um uh we can say that President Biden can win this primary by a lot, by a big margin. So far, as we are told, there's still no results in. The race is still too early to consider percent of the expected vote is in. Actually, we can say that this primary, I think, is one of the shortest, especially in the Republican side. As of right now, there are now only two candidates remaining in the race. That's former President Donald Trump. Actually, three: former President Donald Trump, former U.S. Ambassador Nikki Haley, and Pastor Ryan Binkley. But Pastor Binkley doesn't have any delegates so far, so that's why two candidates remain in the race. That's former President Trump and his former UN Ambassador Nikki Haley. All right, it's 8:06. Sorry, 8:06 here in the Philippines. 7:06 Eastern Time. We'll be right back. This is Capital Politics coverage. America votes. The South Carolina primary. Good, good evening. Welcome back to Capital Politics coverage of the South Carolina Democratic primary. It's now 8:10 on the on sorry 7:10 p.m. on the East Coast, and actually we have seen that the decision desk headquarters has now projected um that the president will win in South Carolina primary at exactly 7 p.m. Eastern Time. The decision desk headquarters already projected that the president will win. But here, us in capital politics will await votes, just a little votes, to make sure that mathematically, will do mathematically correct if we can now project, or if we have now the confidence to project a winner in South Carolina primary. Actually, the thing I think that South Carolina became the Democrats' first, quote unquote, first in the nation poll vote is because of the Biden win. If you remember back in 2020, President Biden, who's now having then candidate Joe Biden, who is now sinking a presidential campaign, was endorsed by Representative James Clyburn. And then after that, boom, he won all counties in South Carolina. That South Carolina primary. So the next in South Carolina primary is on February 6th. That will be the Nevada Democratic primary. While for the Republicans, February 8th will be the Republican caucus in Nevada and also in Virgin Islands. The next is February 24th, South Carolina, the Republican presidential primary. That's Saturday also. We'll bring you that coverage. Also, Michigan 27 uh, presidential primary for vote Democrats and Republicans. For March, the next is we have Michigan Republican Presidential Caucus. February 2, also Idaho Republican Presidential Caucus, February 2, Missouri Republican Presidential Caucus, February 2, also District of Columbia Republican Presidential Primary, February 3. 4 is North Dakota Republican Presidential Caucus. On February 5, the Super Tuesday, March 5, Super Tuesday, 16 states voting: Alabama, Alaska, Arkansas, California, Colorado, Iowa for the Democrats. Maine, Massachusetts, Minnesota, North Carolina, Oklahoma, Tennessee, Texas, Utah, Vermont, Virginia, and American Samoa. It's now 8:14 p.m. on the East Coast. Oh, sorry, 7:14. Sorry, I'm basing the time here in the Philippines. 7:14 p.m. on the East Coast. We still don't have any results. We'll be right back. This is Capital Politics coverage of America Votes, the South Carolina primary. Good evening. Welcome back to Capital Politics special coverage of America Votes the South Carolina primary. It's now 8 9 sorry, 7:19 a.m. on the East Coast, and we have now votes coming in. President Biden has a commanding lead. We have a graphical error there. It should be 2.1%. But President Biden has now or is leading 507 votes, Marianne Williamson 17 votes, Dean Phillips 12 votes. The Associated Press has not called this a race. We'll be right back. This is Capital Politics coverage. America votes the South Carolina primary. It's 7:25 p.m. on the East Coast. Capital Politics now projects President Joe Biden has won the South Carolina Democratic primary. To those who are joining us, welcome once again to Capital Politics coverage of the South Carolina Democratic primary at 7:25 p.m. Eastern Time. Capital Politics called the race for President Joe Biden. Let's have a look at the latest tally so far. President Biden is leading 18,387 votes. Marianne Williamson 313. Dean Phillips 228. Do we have now the delegates for a while? Let's see if we have now the delegates. Okay. Uh, yes, we now have delegates. President Biden 42. The rest is 0. We'll just update our data for a while. Alright, welcome back to Capital Politics coverage of America Votes South Carolina primary. President Biden, sorry, apologies for that. The president has now 15 delegates. Let's see the results. 13% of the votes are now in. President Biden still has commanding lead by, I think this is more than 18,000 votes. The delegates, there you have it. 15 delegates for President Biden, 0 for Dean Phillips, and 0 also for Marianne Williamson. And that ends the special coverage of Capital Politics on this South Carolina primary. Thank you so much for joining us. We'll bring you up to date updates as the race gets on and the votes are still coming in. For now, I'm Ethan Vargas from Manila. Thank you for joining us. This is America Votes Campaign 24, the South Carolina primary.
Are you with me in this one?
We will lead America back to its rightful and righteous place.
I don't want just a little chicken. This country needs to turn around.
This is a Capital Politics special. America Votes Campaign 24, the South Carolina Democratic primary.